Hello and welcome to Spotlight. The COVID-19 pandemic and the subsequent lockdown has given an enormous setback to the retail industry in Oman. To discuss this, we have three guests today in our panel. Mr. Chandrasekr, who is a GM of Jawad Sultan group of companies whose businesses presence ranges from luxury brand retailing, mall development, mass entertainment, travel and tours, and hospitality. Mr. George, General Manager, Leasing and Development at Lulu Group International. Khalid Sulaimani, Director of Muscat Gourmet. Joji, I will start with you. Last 3 months was not easy. I think the last 3 months your malls have been completely closed because of the pandemic. How was it the last 3 months? If you can just brief us.
Look, initially when the pandemic was announced and we were assuming that the pandemic is short-lived, we were assuming that it would be a week or 2 weeks. Then obviously the 2 weeks became 4 weeks, 4 weeks became 6 weeks and 8 weeks, and obviously we are sitting here and we are close to about 90 days. Now, what is important to understand is that when times are uncertain, how do you plan? Because obviously you cannot plan anything when things are uncertain. So it has been short-term planning. Obviously you improvise when time passes by. So since the first month of closure, we did several steps to mitigate whatever is the effects in terms of our operational expenditures. We looked at how we could improve our efficiency of working from our office setup. We looked at different angles. So obviously it has been month-on-month planning, but unfortunately there is no more scenario of certainty in terms of planning, because strategy could be put in place when you know what is your end result. But unfortunately here things are uncertain and we are still foreseeing some more delays in terms of mall opening. So that's where we are, unfortunately.
Chandrasekr, one thing I want to ask you is, you're into luxury brand retailing, travel and tours, hospitality. I'm sure the last 2 months have not been easy for you. Where do you see this whole retail industry going in Oman?
See, we are currently in the midst of the pandemic. The crisis is still not over. We are seeing the cases increasing day by day. While the increase in the cases may be of concern to the population, but I think we should not be unduly worried for only one reason. The authorities are doing a very splendid job in terms of doing rapid testing. So as we know, everywhere when there are rapid testing happening, the cases are likely to go up. It doesn't mean that you suddenly discover more and more cases because everything was hidden. No, nothing of that sort. So hence, it's a bit of a worry in a very broader perspective. But if you look at it very intently, we need to be comforted by the fact that once the cases are identified and the cases are more, the authorities are taking swift and corrective action, isolating them, going into quarantine, or even making sure that they are being comforted and they are not sort of going back to the mainstream. So this is where the situation is all about. And talking specifically about retail, I think the problem is not related to COVID alone. I think you have to go back to history in my view. Because if you look at it, the entire Middle East, here I am bringing the Middle East into account mainly because the Middle East was affected through the oil price crisis. It started somewhere in 2014-15. That's where I think the fracking from the US started, the oil from the United States came in, and oil from the other parts also came in. So basically it disturbed the ecosystem out here. So that gave to a situation where the prices started fluctuating very violently. And then you were seeing an era of, should I call it as a low oil prices. The prices fluctuated from low to lower and to lowest. I mean, this is just a very, I would say, very dramatic way of putting it. But there is nothing that these governments could do. They were trying their level best to see that the prices go up, but then it's a function of technicals and fundamentals, But here I thought there was more of technicals coming into play. And then lately, in the last 6 months to 1 year, the difficulty has been more from the point of view of storage. The thing is that people are finding the storage as more practically full. The oil is practically available in the market. So naturally, it's a question of demand and supply. So there is nothing much to say on this major factor, but that contributed. Let me tell you that this is the main reason why the national economy in most of the countries were affected, because the resources which are being raised through the oil prices did not come to that level. So naturally the developmental expenditure also affected. And people were not in a position to get that percolating effect of the prices into the economy. So naturally when there is nothing happening, the government stopped spending. The government stopped spending, obviously it had a recoiling effect on everywhere. The people also stopped spending and it affected every industry. I'm not here talking in respect of the staples. When I say staples, basically essentials. People like Lulu and Carrefour on their staples, they would not have seen any great reduction in their staple consumption. But that doesn't mean that they are not affected. They are also affected in a big way. But I would say the leisure industry, let me put it this way, the luxury retail industry is very badly affected because it's more of impulse. It's more of situation where you have more money in your pocket, so you go around and splurge yourself. You go around and go for a holiday. You know, you go and take a long cruise and so on and so forth. All this actually significantly affected. So hence, you would say that COVID, in my view, only added to the problem. COVID did not cause the problem significantly, but COVID added to the problem. We're taking the whole thing down to the slope much faster. So this is what the situation is all about. But I'm pretty certain about one thing, that COVID is going to be a thing of the past, which is not very far away in my view, because more and more corrective measures, more and more effective measures which are being taken all over the world, we will see the back of our COVID very soon. When that happens, naturally things will come back to normalcy. But let me tell you one thing, there is a bit of a caution. The new normal, as everyone puts it, will not be the same like what it used to be right now. Because what has happened is, it has opened the eyes of the people as to where they are going wrong. Because the governments everywhere, particularly again in Oman here, they have been instructing the people, rather telling them cajoling them, let me put it this way, telling them that maintain social distancing, wash your hands regularly, and then make sure that, there are, the sanitizers are being used very regularly, and then make sure that you don't go to crowded places. So these are things which I think if you follow very systematically and regularly, I am pretty much certain that you'll be able to arrest the spread of the pandemic. Last but not the least, one important word to be seen is the vaccine part. Everyone is now today talking in the world that vaccine is on the way. America, somebody is claiming from Israel, somebody is claiming from even China for that matter. But we have not seen the vaccine as yet. My own view is that vaccine might take some time to come. But I have a larger question here. Even if the vaccine comes, let's say tomorrow, the vaccine, in order to get it commercial production and get into the market, how much time it will take to reach the entire population of the planet? Until and unless everybody in the planet is not being vaccinated, you can't say COVID is out. So hence, let's not be living in a pipe dream saying that vaccine will come and everything will be normal. No, everything will be normal only when we follow the instructions of the authorities. We follow this very strictly. I'm sure I think we will be in a position to do better.
So Khalid, in this COVID-19 crisis, where do you see Oman's retail industry moving?
The retail industry will not stop. You'll always have a need in the market. Demand and supply will not stop, but the way it's going to be transacted will actually take a difference. Right now, the retail industry is a block building. We're actually going to change into focused more of electronic. We're going to move into the digital era. A lot of people have, the commodity will stay the same, the demand will still stay the same, the approach will change. I believe that Oman is going to even change in regards to understanding its customer a little bit better, understanding what the need of the customer, efficiency of the customer. So it will change in regards to the approach of how the seller and the purchase person will actually look into it.
But where do you see this going, Joji? This whole crisis at one side, and of course the whole retail industry has been affected massively. So where do you see this taking you?
Look, as with the mall, it's a macro set of a number of stakeholders together. So you've got the retailers, you've got customers whose end of the day, the retailers are a conduit for yourself to sustain in business, because obviously what I'm trying to say is that the consumers are becoming your eventual stakeholders, while the retailers are the conduit towards you. Because obviously if the consumers are not there, then obviously there's no point, or in effect there is no reason for you to operate as well. So the changes what the pandemic has actually brought forward has been, obviously you can say that it has been a massive disruption in the business sense. As I said, things are uncertain. We do not know when and how things will pan out. But we are taking cue from what is happening across the region. So if you're looking at other regions in terms of UAE, Saudi, which is open, they're showing promising signs. There are retailers who are saying that their business are steadily picking. It's not that day one then they open businesses back to level it used to be prior to the closure itself. So the business is eventually picking up, and there is a general optimism. So obviously you can think from an angle that eventually people will get used to the whole scenario, and now that we are understanding that the scenario, the COVID scenario, is basically going to be with us for some time, you've got to live with it. So eventually people will get used to it. The measures which is adopted is for their own interest, so that is well heeded and understood. So that will make a change in their way of behaving, which means that people, when they go in for shopping, they go in for dining, they go in for leisure activities, they maintain social distancing, and so that becomes a new way of business, So that's the way we are looking at it. So eventually, we are hopeful that on a steady pace, things will get back to normal.
As we speak, as you rightly said, the malls are all closed. So once it's opened, what are the measures that capital stores are going to take in terms of, giving that sort of, like I said, confidence to these customers so that they can come back to the malls and do the shopping?
See, very interesting again here, a couple of years ago, or I don't know whether it's a couple of years ago, maybe 3-4 years ago, we had a concept called phygital. I think some of you may be aware of what I'm talking about. It's a combination of two words called physical and digital. Now, this physical part is the live showrooms where people can go. The digital part is basically coming out of the e-commerce platform. Now, what are we going to do in respect of phygital? The part here is that we are telling the people that you shop online, okay, and come to the stores to pick up. Either you come directly or we engage a mechanism whereby somebody can pick up these stuff from here. Already I must compliment Lulu group that they have already started this. They are also doing it. The phygital is probably in Oman. Lulu has been the forerunner to sort of do this. So in that sense, we are not doing anything extraordinary or novel. Some years ago, Macy's in the US, when they saw their retail sales plummeting to a very low level, they brought in this concept of phygital. Amazon does phygital. Even in China, you've got phygital. So I think going forward, the way would be phygital. And to answer your question very specifically, I see a very great potential in terms of telling the customers that, look, you may not be in a position to come and shop as you used to in terms of getting into the shops and so on and so forth, but you will get a real close live experience in the terms of virtual world, and you will be able to physically see the goods when they come to pick up, or you engage somebody else to come and pick up on your behalf.
So basically you mean to say that brands or retailers who sort of embrace technology is going to win this pandemic?
Very well said, very well said. In fact, you have to embrace technology because artificial intelligence is coming. Let me put a very interesting quote I would like to give you. There is a very legendary professor who I regard in a very high manner. Not that he is not there anymore, he is very much there, but a very senior person called Professor Ramcharan. Way back in 2000, almost 20 years ago, who would have thought that which two companies are going to rule the roost in terms of technology? In year 2000, if I'm not mistaken, Professor Ramcharan said that two companies which are going to embrace the technology, which is basically algorithms and artificial intelligence, will rule the world for the next 25 to 30 years. He said in 2000. I would like to keep that in suspense. People may want to know which are those two companies. Well, you could even guess it easily by looking at the popularity. One is Amazon, another is Google. This was the foresight of Professor Ramcharan. So I think Mr. Nishad was answering your question that yes, digital and also the virtual world is the way forward, in my view.
So Khalid, you're an entrepreneur yourself. How confident are you in passing this crisis?
Again, to the same, coming back to it, I believe this pandemic will pass. I believe maybe another pandemic might come along as well. Change has to be there. Efficiency and speed of change has to be there as well. So as an entrepreneur myself, operationally, the mindset had to change. Addressing the customer's need is very different compared to how it was 6 months ago. The mental state of the customer has changed completely. He might like the product, he might want the product, but he doesn't like it the same way it was delivered to him before. So we have to understand as a consumer or as a business owner or as an entrepreneur, I have to understand what the customer needs.
Joji, at some point, I'm sure you'll all have to open the malls and eventually customers will come back to malls. But what are the precautionary measures that Oman Avenues Mall and your other malls have taken in terms of oozing that confidence to these customers so that they can come back confidently to these malls?
Look, I think as a mall and being a public place, we think that we are one of the safest places to visit. We've employed a host of measures towards safeguarding the interest of our customers, safeguarding the interest of the people who are working within the mall. To say a few things which we've employed. For example, you must have seen when you actually walked in through the entrance of the mall today, you must have seen those large installations which is done at the entrance. Those are what is called as a black body thermal imaging camera, which reads temperatures accurately, and the advantage with that one is basically that you have mass sensing capability for those cameras. So you need not actually manage that independently. You can actually manage that from a remote distance using a dashboard, and all the cameras are networked into one dashboard, and you can actually mass screen people walking in a group. You don't necessarily require them to be walking in a line. We've got face recognition cameras which is installed for the benefit of all the in-house employees of the mall, as well as staffs who are employed within each of the shops as such. So obviously what that does is basically it allows only entry into the mall, provided these members are actually wearing a face mask, these members are actually recording right temperatures. So those face recognition cameras are installed in all the entry points as well. We've got automatic sanitization points, contactless sanitization points across the entire length and breadth of the mall itself. We are actually having a protocol that every half an hour we sanitize our lifts, we sanitize the handrails, we sanitize our lift corridors. Frequently, wherever there is surface contamination possibility, we've employed measures towards sanitizing. We have a dedicated team whose only role is basically in the morning to sanitize, as well as in the evening after closure hours to sanitize using equipments like UV sanitization and fogging and so and so. Now the point is basically, I would assume, Nishad, you must be staying in a multi-story building. Let's assume that you have to use the lift and you have to get to your apartment. Would you think that is it safe enough to be going to your own house or safe enough to come to a mall? Because obviously with these many measures and security procedures which is put towards ensuring the safety of our customers and consumers, I would think that the mall is essentially a very, very safe place to visit, keeping in consideration that these many measures have been taken. And mind it, as with Oman Avenues Mall, the design of the mall is in such a way that the corridors are a good 11 meters. So you have enough space between aisles, enough space between shops, enough space between. So there is, you can say that effectively you can keep necessary social distance as and when required. So I would really think that mall is a very safe place to visit, even safer than your own residential apartment block, be that yours or mine or however it is, So these are, I would believe these are measures which would instill confidence among our consumers and end users,
Khalid, you have spoken about technology in general, how it's going to win this pandemic. As an entrepreneur, what are the technological features that you have, embraced in this crisis to win this crisis? Technology,
as you clearly mentioned, is key. The technology we're using is basically the social media. It was very difficult for us to get in touch with our customers. It was very difficult for us to understand our customers and their needs just by the normal way that we used to do it. But right now with technology and social media, to be precise, we're talking about Instagram, we're talking about Snapchat, we're talking about many other platforms that we utilize as well. But it has to be done carefully as well. It has to be done in terms of the communication. There's so much out there. You can get a lot of information out there. How do you convert it into your own data? How do you convert it into information? How do you convert it into value for your customer as well? Makes a huge difference as well. Technology with understanding of your customers' behavior is key here. I see the marriage between the both is the future, basically what's going to happen as well. Especially the pandemic proved it, and going forward will I think it's going to be the next thing forward.
But Joji, e-commerce in general has a huge potential in this country, especially in this time of crisis, right? I mean, I'm sure a lot of people are coming to you in terms of purchasing stuff from Oman Avenues Mall. So, what is your feedback from them?
Look, one of the key features which we think is an advantage is the internet proliferation within Oman is quite high. The age group of people who use actually e-commerce portals and e-commerce as a means to purchase or shop are within the so-called, you can say, the millennium, which has a higher affordability level. And when you look at the purchasing parity of their income versus what they spend, it's on the higher side. So these are essential benchmark, essential fundamentals which we think that eventually would support us. But as I said, it's not very smooth to get e-commerce platforms moving. We need to have the right resource, because we could probably burning in a lot of money and eventually land up into something which is not effective. So whatever we bring in, it should be sustainable on the longer term, and it should be foolproof. So that's what we are planning now.
Chandrasekr, you're a market veteran and you've been here for quite a long time. Where do you see this whole Omani economy is going forward?
See, Oman economy, in my view, like most other Gulf economies, is definitely challenged because to a substantial extent, I think we are dependent on hydrocarbon sort of resources in terms of our national economy. And when the prices from the hydrocarbons are very, very challenged, I would say very sort of extremely pressurized, naturally the resources raising is going to be a big problem. The government is trying their best to see how best they can raise resources. Now, there is no magic mantra in my view. Whatever best that you can do under the circumstances. At the same time, you have a dual objective of making sure that the inflation does not run very high by excessive borrowing, which I think the government is doing a splendid job. They are trying to make sure that the local population is not affected, the jobs are created. Most importantly, I think the 2040 dream, in my view, realizes the fact that they're going to move away substantially from the fossil fuel resource, that is the hydrocarbons, to non-oil resources, being development, infrastructure development, getting FDIs, going to export promotion zones, and where they can develop, where they can ask the overseas companies to come and set up their production bases and give them some tax rebates and so on and so forth. In my view, I think that is giving a very good results. We are already seeing very good examples of good companies coming in and progressing very well in Salala and in Sohar, and also Dukum. There is a rapid development which is happening. Already we see good reports about Chinese companies coming there and setting up their operations and also investing in the economy in a big way. So to my mind, I think while it might appear to be a bit challenging because of the fact that the COVID is still not behind us, and also due to the fact that economies all around the world are facing problems. It's not Oman is alone facing the problem. Everyone is facing the problem. But having said that, Oman is doing its best to sort of combating this particular menace. They will definitely come out, but it will take a bit of a time. But that time is reasonable looking into the macro situation. So we will be better off in the next 3 to 4 years. I think definitely things will start looking up very well. And Oman definitely is very close to my heart in my view. I would love to see it back to its restored glory.
So Khalid, with this lockdown, most of your business activities have been closed over the last 2 months to contain the spread of the virus. What were the measures that you've taken as a businessman to limit the losses that you've had?
It has affected us. Even with the limitation that what you've mentioned, it doesn't mean that the losses are not there. It's limiting the losses or mitigating the closure of the whole business together. It was operationally, we looked into it. How was the flow of operations? The same, let's take the restaurant industry, for example. You had a lot of front of house staff, waiters that would serve the normal guests that would walk in. With the epidemic, restaurants were all closed, no more front of house staff, but the same staff were available. You have to understand how to utilize them, understand how to change. So to me, I believe the speed of change made a huge difference. Acceptance of the situation makes a huge difference as well. Cost, delivery. There was a lot of delivery. Suddenly from a restaurant that we were operating as a dine-in customers, there was no more zero dine-in customers, and suddenly the whole restaurant went into delivery. how do you actually change that from the kitchen staff all the way to stuff? There was a little bit of mental stress, but pulling the team together had it as well. The pricing model had to be changed as well. A lot of customers are price sensitive. Just because they come into the retail, they're ready to buy it, but when they are sitting at home by itself, how do you actually sell it to them as well? Made it different. The pricing mechanism had to change as well. So that was, from our angle, we looked at it from different layers, the pricing, the operations, and still keeping the customer experience alive as well.
But Chandrasekr, being an experienced GM, being a seasoned GM, what's your best advice to the other retail companies that's running businesses in Oman?
It's again, I would say, I think the current pandemic will definitely put everybody to jittery, in the sense that people may be very, very scared whether I should invest in their own existing business, given the fact that there is no recovery being in sight. But I am telling you that if somebody is into business for long haul sake, to use somebody's phrase, that they have to, there is a saying that when the going gets tough, the tough gets going. So obviously, I think all the retailers who are there in the business should not be sort of, unfazed by the existing situation, what you are seeing. So you have to take that courage. You should not be panicking, in my view, because there is no need to panic. Yes, there may be situations of grave concern because you are not getting your resources. You are supposed to pay your expenses, but you are not getting your resources. But the fact of the matter is that if you put your house in order, I am reasonably certain that you will be able to make all the ends meet. So you have to be very bold, and you cannot panic. And last but not the least, I would say, if you are a retailer, so what if you are not able to start operations in your shop? Now, nowadays, you are finding new concepts like what we did recently, e-mall. Go and align yourself with an e-mall, which can basically start off operations in a quickie. In the sense that if you are not able to start operations, let's say in a mall or any shopping destination or so on and so forth, you can go virtual. Today, virtual possibilities exist all around the world. So you should take advantage of that. And very recently, I happened to see a very interesting payment proposition called AFS. AFS is an app which I saw, which really was it really bowled me completely, because you don't need a POS interface. Your smartphone can be used as a POS machine, and you can sign out through that. Can you believe this? So hence, I think there are lots of contactless options which are coming day in and day out. There are new developments which are happening, and the smartphone is basically what you're having, gives you the power to sort of reach out to the market. Hence, concluding advice to my retail friends is, don't panic, all is not lost, stay put, I think, and look at possibilities how you can expand your business through various means which I have told you.
So looking ahead, how confident are you in winning this battle against COVID-19?
Look, I think to answer that question, it is something of a personal review than something which probably a general consensus of people, how they would think. I personally think, given the nature of the virus, it's part of the corona family of viruses. Obviously, there were other viruses within the same family. The SARS virus was one of them. It is a new virus. It is something which is highly contagious, but obviously because it is new and novel in nature, we do not have a treatment. There are no vaccines in practice. I personally assume that there are viable vaccines and treatments which would effectively come into play by the last quarter of the year. Eventually, people would, when the mass administration happens, and then people are confident in, being, I would say, being insulated against being affected with this virus, things would get back to normal. So effectively, I think between last quarter of the year towards early next year, I would believe that things would rather settle. And prior to that itself, people will understand the new realms of life. They will get used to the new way of life as such. So that will set path towards a normalization of how we are looking at what we're looking at things. So that's my personal review. Things could be different because obviously nothing can be predicted, as we've seen with this virus itself. What we had assumed would come and go in a short span of time has been with us for the last 3 months. So my personal review is as what I said,
So what will be your advice, Khalid, to these Omani entrepreneurs, businessmen, who are facing the similar battle? That's a tough question.
No, it's actually a very challenging question I ask myself every day, because you can't stop. Supply and demand is always going to be there. It's always been there. You know, the needs of the customer is always going to be there. His method of how he wants is always going to be there. I always say, let the customer drive it. Let the customer dictate what he wants, supply it. Efficiency is always key. Price sensitivity is always key. The product that he wants is what you have, and how you're going to supply it to them. Don't give up. Just number one key is always make sure that change is the number one drive as well. Accept change. Don't be difficult to change. You know, the mentality of change should always be there as well. And that's the key thing, and the pandemic showed it as well. And the speed of change shows the success as well of the whole business.
So thank you so much for taking part in this panel discussion. It's an honor to have all three of you in this panel. Thank you.